And if I take from you your gods, as Paul took from the Athenians their gods, then it's a blessing. If you can lose your God, it's a good thing, because the real God you can't lose. And you can never lose being. You can never lose the sense of I am. You can lose everything else, but you can never cease to be aware that you are. That's God. And so if I can't take that from you, well, then I can't take the real God from you. But if I can take any other thing from you, and you worship it, you have the false God. And I did you a service in taking anything but the reality, because I can't take the reality from you. So all outer services and ceremonies, they mean nothing. Nothing. Go about your Father's business, which is yourself, doing noble things in this world, imagining the best, and it will come to pass. That's why I say, if it seems that I reiterate and restate night after night after night, it's essential. Because if you are perfectly honest with yourself this day, and you observe what you are imagining in the course of one day, you'll be ashamed of what you imagine. And yet you are imagining things you do not want to happen. And yet you will give lip service to the statement, imagining creates reality. And then one moment later, a friend of mine up in San Francisco, she was a friend of a mutual friend, and they didn't get on very well, only at moments. One night, riding with her, we went down, maybe 75 miles down the peninsula for a dinner. Lovely dinner, and all the way back, this very, very heavy fog. You could hardly see a few yards before you. And she was talking of this friend of mine, who she claimed to be a friend of hers. And she would rant against this woman. So and so and so, I wouldn't even print it. You couldn't print it. It burned the page. And then at the end of her statement, she would say, God bless her soul. She kept up the entire 75 miles, blasting this woman, and then she would qualify the whole thing, and it was all forgiven. God bless her soul. So she is still here. The other one has gone from this little section of time, and she's still playing the same part, using her imagination in every way she doesn't want in this world. And things went from bad to worse in her world. And they're still that way. And she can't for one moment believe she is the cause of the phenomena of her life. Oh no, she can't for one moment. And yet I had one long 75-mile drive with her, where it would take a whole lifetime to reap that harvest. What she said in that long drive from dinner back home. So man has a very weak memory, and he doesn't remember when he did these things. But there's a depth in man who does not forget. Be warned in Galatians, be not deceived. God is not mocked. As a man sows, so shall he reap. Then we are told by the poet, you see yonder fields, the sesamum was sesamum, and the corn was corn. The darkness and the silence knew, and so is a man's fate born. So you don't recognize your own harvest, but it couldn't make a mistake. Everything is after the identical seed. You plant a seed. What seed was it? Well, you've forgotten what it was. Well, wait till the tree comes up. You'll know. Because it can't be other than what was planted. If I plant an oak, well then the oak is going to spring up into the oak tree. If I plant that sort of an acorn, that's going to be the oak tree. But if I plant something else, well then wait. If I've forgotten what I planted, wait. The harvest will show me. And man denies his own harvest. So I'm telling you that your own wonderful human imagination is God. It's the God of Scripture, the only God. Whether in the Old Testament you call him the Lord, or call him Jehovah, or call him God, or in the New Testament you call him Jesus, it's the same thing. This is the creative power in man, and that creative power in man is man's own wonderful human imagination. Why repeat unnumbered stories that I've told you in the past? I could start with new ones, but what? You know the technique. And the technique is simple. If all things are created out of man's human imagination, well then let him start imagining what he wants to be. And if he does, success will follow him. But in the meanwhile, try to prune the plant. Because when you hear for the first time that your imagination is God, it's an awful shock. Because as the poet said, behold this vine. I found it a wild tree, whose wanton strength had swollen into irregular twigs. But I pruned the plant, and then it grew temperate in its vain expense of useless leaves, and knotted, as you see, into these clean, full clusters to repay the hand that wisely wounded it. So when you first find that the vine spoken of in the Bible, I am the vine of eternity, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. And you discover, well, that vine is my imagination. For then the whole thing went into leaves, useless leaves and branches. It was not producing grapes. Then I start to prune the tree by observing what I'm imagining in the course of 24 hours. It becomes a habit. Then the next day, I do a little bit better. The third day, better still. By the end of a week, I am in the habit now of watching what I'm imagining. And don't wait. Instantly prune it. Stop it. Stop imagining. Don't indulge yourself. I have heard people say to me, but just one more second. It's such a pleasant thing to tell him off. And so in his mind's eye, he is telling off someone, all in his imagination, knowing he's going to reap the fruit of it. Now, if you know that, you aren't going to simply spend an extra 5 seconds of precious time in finishing that emotion. Stop that emotion and get on a new trend. And then you prune the plant. And finally that plant's going to reward you with clean, full clusters because you wisely wounded it. And then you keep that vine going, and the vine will pay enormous dividends. I know from experience. When you go to bed at night, let your last thought be something noble, something wonderful, that you are now, or those you love are now, what you would like to be, and drop off into the deep in that state, and make it a habit. As we are told, you plant a seed, and then the seed becomes an act, and the act becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a character.